Hello there, Year 12. A very warm welcome along to Term 3, Lesson 6, in which we are going to look at performing. And we're going to review an extract where we would take on the role of a performer in a section in Our Country's Good. So, our objectives for today's lesson are as follows. We're going to be able to identify appropriate references for a performing question. We're going to be able to describe how you would perform as the role of a character in a scene. And then we're going to analyse the meaning that this and the use of these performance skills might communicate to an audience, and we're going to focus specifically on feelings and emotions of a specific character. So, you are going to need for today's lesson paper, pen, a copy of Our Country's Good, and a circle map. And actually, although I haven't included it in our resources, I've sent through to you just 3 pages from Max Stafford Clark's study guide of Our Country's Good. I would also have those in front of me as well, so it's definitely worth getting those up too, because I'm going to make reference to them later in the video. So pause the video now, make sure that you've got the 3 resources on the screen and also the 3 pages of the study guide that I sent to you with the resources for today's lesson. Wonderful. Okay, so as per usual, let's start off by identifying all the appropriate references for a performance question. We need to make sure that our references are not just based on vocal and physical skills and performance skills, but also looking at the requirements of the question. So what else do we need to include that deviates from just those performance skills? So I'm going to ask you to pause the video now. I want you to spend no longer than 3 minutes identifying all of these different things. Okie dokie then. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the information with you that is on the right of your screen. These are all things that we might look to identify within a performance question, taking on the role of a performer. So, we need to start off by identifying a moment in a scene, and we need to use a quote to support that. We really need to pinpoint that for our reader. We then need to identify appropriate performance skills, and we need to describe how you as a performer will execute these in a scene. So we need to use correct terminology there. So give me an example of a performance skill, and I'm going to go through some of these with you in a moment, but then describe how they will look. So it's not just enough to say facial expression. We need to talk about what the facial expression will look like, the tone of voice, the volume. Is it loud? Is it quiet? And so on and so forth. Is it high or low pitch, etc. We then need to analyse how your use of performance skills communicates an appropriate meaning to the audience. So what does a high pitch symbolise to an audience? What does a low pitch symbolise? If I've got a loud volume, why is that? And so on and so forth. Do your performance skills change throughout the scene? And if they do, why do they do that? And then actually, if you have the knowledge to do this and you are in your exam allowed a copy of the text, are your performance skills different from earlier within the play? And why is that? How has the character evolved, and why would you feel the need to change that? What I would say to that point is that you've been given an extract for a reason. If the question isn't massively asking you to reference another moment in the play, try not to spend too long doing that. But I think it's good to just anecdotally reference that knowledge. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that really important one, links to social, cultural, and historical context. And I'm going to go through some of the things that you might want to talk about there. We need to write from a performer's perspective for the scene. We need to make sure that the analysis and our descriptions link back to the requirements of the question. So if the question is asking you to reference the feelings and emotions of the character, we need to make sure that we're doing that within our analysis. And then finally, I've got loads of different things that you might want to make reference to in terms of performance skills, and they're in the bottom left-hand corner of the box. So vocal skills, so pitch, pause, pace, volume, tone, etc. Physical skills, gait, posture, body language, facial expression, gesture, etc. Then we've got the elements that kind of come under this performance skills section, which might not be immediately obvious. So we've got eye contact, spatial relationships, movement, costume, props and set that the character might interact with in the scene, space, physical appearance, so that might be age, build, height, etc. But remember, if we're talking about set, it's only how the character interacts with that set. If we're talking about costume, we talk about costume in the context of how it impacts our performance. You are not designing for this question, so I don't need to hear that in great detail. But again, I think we've spoken about this lots before. If you want to be playing it very safe, talk about movement, talk about vocal skills, talk about physical skills, and leave anything else to the appropriate question, I think, and then we're definitely safe. We're definitely hitting the criteria that is appropriate to the question. So I'm going to ask you, for those of you who didn't get all of those things written down, it's definitely worth adding those to the notes that we've created for today's lesson. Add them in a different colour for me, please, and then come back to the video when you have done so. So, I'm going to ask you to read through pages 76 to 77. It's Act 2, Scene 8. It's Duckling Makes Vows, and basically it is the scene where Harry dies and we have Duckling by his bedside, in so many words. So I want you to read through the extract and I want you to note down. I want you to describe Duckling's feelings and emotions in that scene. So I'm just looking for kind of 5 adjectives that describe how she's feeling. You could talk about the circumstances. You could even mention the conflict that she feels, how this might contrast from other moments in the play. It's just really initial notes that summarise Duckling in that scene, but again, really linking it back to those feelings and emotions. And then begin to consider any performance skills that you could use to demonstrate these feelings and emotions to an audience. Now, you don't have to write these down necessarily, but if you can, it's only going to make your next task easier. So again, no longer than 5 minutes doing this. The scene is actually not even a page long. So no longer than 5 minutes on this scene and the note taking. If you don't get all the notes written down, that's fine. Come back to the video and we'll move on together. So, on your screen in front of you, you will see in the blue box you've got the instructions for our circle map, and then on the right hand side of the screen you've got some examples. Now notice that actually I haven't given you lots of detail here. I don't feel the need to. I think performance skills and approaching a question in the role of a performer is actually something that we're quite strong at. So I've made it quite simple for you. I've given you some examples, but I haven't made it too easy for you. So let's go through the instructions in the blue box first. So you are playing the role of Duckling. Circle 1, I want you to identify an appropriate moment using a quote. In the scene you wish to discuss your performance of or for. So you're playing the role of Duckling. Give me moments within Duckling's monologue. I mean, she's the only character to speak in that scene that you want to talk about. You can talk about how she interacts with Harry as well, but obviously he doesn't have any dialogue, so that would need to be done within the second circle, which then talks about describe how you would perform the role of Duckling for this scene. So, and you need to base that really on the references from the previous task. So you can talk to me about the vocal and physical skills, whether she's going to be interacting with Harry in a certain way. Are they using space to do that? But again, like I said, just stick with vocal and physical skills where possible. I think that's the easiest element. And then finally, looking in a square, we need to analyse how your performance skills communicate Duckling's feelings and emotions effectively to an audience at that moment within the play. And I talk about that moment, don't talk about the scene, talk about the quote. Okay, so it's the quote and how it represents her emotion on that specific moment within that specific extract. So let's just take a look at just a couple of examples. So I've given you one quote, and it's "I hate you, full stop, no, I love you." And what I've done there is I'm just going to talk through the volume of the voice. So it's a loud volume, it's a firm tone for "I hate you." So notice that I've marked that out in a blue box because I'm talking about that "I hate you" moment of that quote. Now, her volume demonstrates her irritation. She's naive to the fact that she actually relies on Harry until he becomes more ill. She's angry that he has died. She's not angry that he is... she's not angry at Harry. She's angry at the situation, the untimely death. She's frustrated that actually she doesn't really have the opportunity to share that love with him, and that's reflected within that volume of voice and also within the firm tone that she demonstrates. And then what I've done is I've come on to talk about "No, I love you," and I've highlighted that within the green box. So when she says "No, I love you," that contrasts that "I hate you" moment. It's a much softer tone. The volume has decreased massively. It's now just a whisper, and this drastic drop in volume, so looking at the square now, it's reflective of the loss she feels when she comes to the realization she actually has lost Harry. So it's like she can't even speak. The loss of voice, the loss of ability to talk within that moment is demonstrating the loss she feels at losing her beloved, even though we don't really see that until this moment. Duckling barely being able to whisper at this moment demonstrates her previously unseen reliance on the character. So again, what I've done is I've linked it back to the scene. What I would say to you is I don't think I have made it particularly clear her feelings and emotions, and I would always say her feelings and emotions at this point are her feelings are, and this is communicated to the audience by. But I think my analysis is basic. I think you can do much, much more. What I also haven't done is the thing that I have highlighted at the bottom of my instructions box. I haven't made 2 references to social, cultural and historical context in the production, and I've not done that very purposely. I've sent you some resources from Max Stafford Clark's study guide, and it is just 3 pages that I want you to read. It is pages 50 to 51, which looks at Harry and kind of describes in real life his meeting Duckling, the circumstances that they have faced and so on, and pages 60 where we review Duckling. Now that's really, really short. We don't really explore Duckling, or Stafford Clark doesn't explore Duckling in the same detail that he explores Harry in. Maybe that's a sense of him being a male in that time period and them knowing more about males. But again, that's another story. We don't need to make that reference. But what I would say to you is that the social context is probably not relevant to a specific quote, and it's probably going to be something that you're going to be including in your introduction. So if you don't want to include it in your map, that's absolutely fine. Just add another slide if you're using the circle map, or if you're doing it in note form. I know many of you are doing so, which is absolutely fine. I would talk about the real stories of Duckling. So you would say, oh, Duckling is based on a real character. Brilliant. Instant context quote. She was born in London. She met Harry before she came to the colony. Something that we could say is that actually Harry had an influence in reducing Duckling's sentence from death to this kind of to the sentence that she is in, the exile, the sentence in Australia, and actually maybe she feels indebted to him because of that, and while that's been noticed throughout the play, you could then link that back to the reliance that she has on him, but without really knowing it, because the control that he has had over her life. So again, there's no right or wrong answer, but I think there's loads of context within those 3 pages, and I want you to just pick out, it's just 2 moments that you can make work within either a moment that you are talking about within one of the 3 sections of this map, or within kind of an opening paragraph where you reference social context. I hope that's clear. I've not given you an example, and I've done that purposely, but I have given you the resources that you need for this. So do make sure that it's included within the answer. Make sure that all of the boxes are ticked, and make sure that you have filled in the entire map appropriate to the instructions that I have given you. So, submitting your work. Please upload your work to the relevant assignment on Microsoft Teams. All of your work should be uploaded by or before the deadline stated. The deadline is clearly shown in the email sent with these resources. In the email that I sent to you last lesson, I said that there was no need to submit your directing map until the 2nd lesson of this week, and that has now come. So what I will need submitted to the assignment is this. I need a copy of your circle map from last lesson, which looks at directing. I need a copy of your circle map from today, which looks at performing. And I need those to be completed in full. Now, I hope I've been really clear in today's session. Do email me if you have any questions. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I look forward to speaking to you again next week. Thank you and goodbye.